The following is a fictional interview featuring Lester Joseph Gillis, or Babyface Nelson, portraying his life and criminal career from his own perspective. This interview is imagined as if conducted near the end of his life in 1934. Welcome to An Interview in History. Imagine a podcast that serves as a bridge across time, connecting listeners to the voices of history's most impactful figures. Each episode is a deep dive into the lives and legacies of these individuals, exploring not just their well-documented achievements, but also uncovering lesser-known facts that shaped their contributions to our world. From scientists who unlocked the mysteries of the universe to activists who fought for social change, each story is a testament to the indelible mark they left on society. This journey through history will not only educate, but also inspire listeners to appreciate the intricate tapestry of human progress. This week on An Interview in History, we're talking with Lester Joseph Gillis, also known as George Nelson and Babyface Nelson. He was an American bank robber who became a criminal partner of John Dillinger when he helped Dillinger escape from prison in Crown Point, Indiana. Later, the Federal Bureau of Investigation announced that Nelson and the remaining gang of bank robbers were collectively public enemy number one. The Babyface Nelson nickname derived from Gillis being a short man with a youthful appearance. However, in the professional realm, Gillis's fellow criminals addressed him as Jimmy. A violent bank robber, Lester Joseph Gillis has killed more agents of the FBI than any other criminal. This interview takes place on November 25th, 1934. Thanks for sitting down with us, Mr. Nelson. Let's start at the beginning. Tell us about your childhood.
Well, I was born Lester Joseph Gillis on December 6, 1908 in Chicago. My folks were immigrants. Dad came from Belgium, worked as a tanner. Hard life. Mom did what she could, but we didn't have much. Grew up in a working-class neighborhood. Nothing fancy.
Did you have any siblings?
Yeah, a couple. We weren't real tight as we got older. Everyone had their own way of dealing with things. Me, I got into trouble early, but we all saw the same streets, the same fights, same hungry winters.
How was school for you?
Didn't stick around long. I was smart, sure, but the classroom bored me. The streets were more exciting and dangerous. By the time I was 12, I was already stealing cars. I got my first taste of reform school before I hit my teens.
So crime came early?
Yeah, you could say that. I ran with some older boys, boosted cars, knocked over shops, petty stuff at first. But I had a temper, and I wasn't afraid to pull a piece. That got me a rep real fast.
So that you were arrested when you were 12?
Yeah, I was arrested when I was 12, after I accidentally shot a playmate in the jaw with a pistol I had found. I served over 1 year in the state reformatory.
What about relationships? Any family of your own?
Sure. I married Helen Wozniak. Most called her Helen Gillis after we tied the knot. She stood by me through everything. We had kids, too. I tried to keep them away from what I was doing, but, hell, how do you hide from a life like mine?
When did things go from local crime to national headlines?
After I broke out of jail in 1932. I was doing a year for a bank job, and I wasn't planning on serving it. Once I was out, I met up with some real heavy hitters. Robbed a bank in Grand Haven, Michigan. Then came the big one, hooking up with John Dillinger.
Ah, tell me about Dillinger.
John was sharp, kinda charismatic. People saw him as a hero, robbing the banks that bled them dry during the Depression. Me, I was never in it for the headlines. I liked the action, the money, and I sure as hell liked the shootouts, huh? But Dillinger, he gave us purpose. We weren't just thugs. We were something more.
Did you feel loyal to him?
Absolutely. I broke him out of jail in Crown Point in '34. We hit banks across the Midwest after that. Sometimes it felt like the law could never catch us. But the heat got real bad after the FBI started chasing us hard.
And the jail time? You mentioned reform school earlier. What about serious prison?
Yeah, I spent some time in juvenile and later in Joliet prison. Did a stretch for auto theft, but I kept breaking out or skipping parole. I didn't believe in being caged. Never have. Prison's a place that kills a man from inside out.
Your reputation's one of the most violent gangsters of the era. Do you think that's fair?
Okay, look, I did what I had to do. The feds call me a psychopath. Maybe I am, but I never killed for fun. I shot when I had to, when someone was in my way, or when they were shooting at me first. The difference is I never hesitated.
If you had a chance to do it over, would you change anything?
I don't believe in regrets. Maybe I'd spend more time with Helen and the kids. I don't know. Maybe I'd pull back a little. But I am who I am. Baby-faced Nelson. By the way, they gave me that name because I looked young. But I was never innocent. Not for a second.
Thank you for your honesty.
Don't thank me. Just tell the right story, okay?
A short but furious gun battle between FBI agents and Nelson took place on November 27, 1934, outside Chicago in the town of Barrington, culminating in the deaths of Nelson and FBI agents Herman Ed Hollis and Samuel P. Cowley. On the morning of November 27th, Nelson, along with his wife Helen Gillis and associate John Paul Chase, headed south in a stolen V8 Ford towards Chicago on U.S. Highway 12. Nelson, always keen to spot federal agents, caught sight of a sedan driven in the opposite direction by agents Thomas McDade and William Ryan. Both parties simultaneously recognized each other, and after several U-turns by both vehicles, Nelson wound up in pursuit of the agent's car. When Nelson's powerful Ford caught up to the agent's slower sedan, Chase opened fire on the agents. Ryan and McDade returned the fire, sped up, then pulled into a field and awaited Nelson and Chase, who had stopped pursuing. McDade and Ryan were unaware that one of their bullets had punctured one of the water pumps on Nelson's Ford. With Nelson's Ford rapidly losing power, Nelson yelled to Helen to take cover in a nearby ditch, and then he and Chase opened fire on the agents. Both Cowley and Hollis returned the fire from behind their vehicle. A single .45 slug from Cowley's machine gun struck Nelson in the lower abdomen. Nelson leaned on the Ford's running board, then wordlessly exchanged weapons with Chase. In the din of the gun battle, Chase heard Nelson complain that his weapon was jamming, and the wounded Nelson swapped it out for an automatic rifle. Despite his wound, Nelson moved from behind the car and advanced toward the agents while firing his weapons. 2 of his bullets struck Cowley. Several buckshot pellets from Hollis's shotgun then struck Nelson in the legs and knocked him down. As Nelson regained his feet, Hollis, possibly already wounded, moved to better cover behind the utility pole. As he drew his service pistol, Nelson fatally shot Hollis in the head. Nelson staggered over Hollis's body, aimed his weapon at the agent's fallen form for a moment, then limped towards the agent's Hudson. Nelson drove the car over to the disabled Ford. After loading the agent's car with Ford's guns and supplies, Nelson let Chase get behind the wheel of the agent's car, and the 2 men and Helen Gillis fled the scene. Nelson was shot a total of 9 times. A single machine gun slug had struck his abdomen, and 8 of Hollis's shotgun pellets had hit his legs. After telling his wife, "I'm done for," Nelson gave directions as Chase drove them to a safe house on Walnut Street in Wilmette. Nelson died in bed with his wife at his side at 7:35 p.m. Nelson's body was discovered wrapped in an Indian-patterned blanket by FBI agent Walter Walsh in a ditch on the northeast corner of the St. Paul's Lutheran Cemetery in Skokie. Taken to Haven's funeral home, both of which still exist. Helen later stated that she had placed the blanket around Nelson's body because he always hated being cold. Newspapers reported, based on the aggressive wording of an order from J. Edgar Hoover, that the FBI had issued a death order for Nelson's widow, who wandered the streets of Chicago as a fugitive for several days, described in print as the U.S. first female public enemy. After surrendering on Thanksgiving Day, Helen served a year in prison for harboring her husband. Chase was apprehended later and served a term at Alcatraz. And now, another forgotten history. The gentleman bandit Charles Earl Bowles, better known as Black Bart, was one of the most unusual outlaws of the Wild West. Unlike the typical gunslinging, rough-and-tumble bandits of his time, Black Bart was a polite, well-dressed, and poetic stagecoach robber who never fired a shot. His reputation as the gentleman bandit made him one of the most fascinating criminals in frontier history. A mysterious beginning born in England, around 1829, Bowles moved to the U.S. as a child and fought in the Civil War before heading west to become a gold prospector. After failing to strike it rich, he mysteriously disappeared for several years, only to reappear as Black Bart, California's most infamous stagecoach robber. The poetic robber between 1875 and 1883, Black Bart robbed at least 28 Wells Fargo stagecoaches in California and Oregon. His method was simple. He wore a long coat, covered his face with a flour sack, and wielded an unloaded shotgun, which he never actually fired. Unlike most outlaws, Bart was known for his politeness. He never harmed passengers, and sometimes even apologized for the inconvenience. But what really made him legendary was his habit of leaving behind poems at the crime scene, mocking the authorities and showing off his wit. One of his famous notes read, "I've labored long and hard for bread, for honor and for riches, but on my corns too long I've tread, you find hair sons of bitches." Black Bart managed to outsmart lawmen for years, until 1883, when he made a rare mistake. After one robbery, he dropped a handkerchief with his laundry mark on it. Detectives traced it back to a San Francisco laundry, leading to his arrest. Sentenced for 6 years in San Quentin, Black Bart served just 4 before being released for good behavior. However, upon his release, he mysteriously vanished from history. Some say he returned to a quiet life under a new identity. Others claimed he resumed robbing stagecoaches in secret. When asked if he would return to crime, he simply said, "No, gentlemen, I'm through with it." Whether he kept his word or disappeared into legend, Black Bart remains one of the most unusual and charismatic outlaws of the Wild West. A gentleman, a poet, and a bandit like no other. Join us next week when we talk with Colonel Harland David Sanders. He was an American businessman and founder of the fast food chicken restaurant chain Kentucky Fried Chicken. Until then, take care.